Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into part 2 of our suspension upgrade series on the 2019 Toyota Tacoma. We'll be tackling two hot topics in the 4x4 world: rear spacer lifts and airbags. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that button and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of our future upgrades. Alright, there's a lot to cover, so let's get started. In our last video, we swapped out the front spacer lift and discussed why spacer lifts might not be ideal for off-road use. Now we're shifting focus to the rear suspension. This Tacoma has a leaf spring setup in the back, and the previous owner installed a 2-inch spacer lift beneath the factory springs, along with longer rear shocks to accommodate the extra down travel. Here's the first controversial opinion. I actually don't think that rear spacer lifts are that bad, as long as they stay under 2 inches. For how we use this truck, I believe a 2-inch lift will hold up fine. Anything beyond that, though, you risk too much movement of the rear axle, which could lead to problems off-road. Once we added the camper shell and decked drawer system, I was surprised to see how much the rear suspension sagged. The weight of just those two additions dropped the rear by about 1.25 inches. And because most of this weight was behind the rear axle, it even caused the front suspension to lift slightly, by about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. Now, for my second controversial take, we're adding airbags to the rear suspension. Why? Because the extra weight from the camper shell, the drawer system, and all the gear we plan to carry, like a 12-volt fridge, power supply, and camping equipment, will be significant. Airbags will help us handle the weight and keep the truck level, no matter how much we load it up. I could have gone with upgraded leaf springs or helper springs, but once you do that, you're stuck at that set spring rate. The beauty of airbags is the adjustability. If I need to remove the camper shell or decked drawer system, I don't want the rear end jacked up high. And if we add more weight later on, it's as easy as adding a few extra PSI to the airbags to get the load level again. Let's take a look at the airbags we're using. We've gone with the Airlift 5000 system, custom made for the 3rd gen Tacoma. There are other options like Firestone and cheaper brands on Amazon, but I've used Airlift on previous vehicles and was always impressed with their quality. Airlift says their system is designed for OEM springs, which is what I have. However, with the torque cradle in place, I believe it will work with aftermarket leaf springs and add-a-leaf kits as well. We'll definitely be testing that out, flexing the suspension. I'll be sure to share video and pics of how it holds up. This airbag setup might not be as bulletproof as full leaf springs, but it offers the flexibility I need for overlanding. And if something goes wrong on the trail, worst case, we're only losing 1 inch or 2 of ride height. No big deal. All right, we're ready to get started on the installation. I have the instructions out. Usually I save the instructions for last, but for this installation, we'll go ahead and refer to them. First step, they show us taking a saw and cutting off nearly all of the rubber bump stop. They show leaving about 3/4 of an inch. I think that with us installing the cradle, we're going to have to take more than that to be able to allow for our nut to stick down into this space. So here's the bump stop. You may be thinking, that's odd, cut the bump stop off, but the airbags actually have a built-in bump stop.
Broken! There's no bones left!
We've tried cutting the bump stop off and have not had much success. Our little jigsaw, the battery went dead. It'll take forever for it to charge up. So we don't even really need this little bracket right here. So what I've done is I've put a jack under the axle. I'm going to loosen these 4 nuts on the bottom of the bolts that go, the U-bolts that go up over the leaf springs. We're going to loosen those up enough to be able to slide this metal bracket and the bump stop out, and then tighten those nuts back up on the bottom of the U-bolts. So we'll go ahead and get started on that. Might just have to take the whole U-bolt off, which isn't a problem. Okay, there's that one. There's where our problem was. We're cutting into that bolt right there. We loosened up these U-bolts, removed this bump stop. You can see there's a hole here in the bottom of the bump stop that allows for this nut and bolt to slide up in there, and that's what we were actually cutting into when we tried to cut it below this 3/4 of an inch mark. So we've got this out of the way, so we're going to go ahead and tighten the nuts up on the bottom of the U-bolts on the axle and continue with the installation. The next step in the installation is to take one of these metal cups and mount them on top of the airbag like this. And then there's a little elbow, 90-degree elbow that goes in this hole. Let me see if I can find the parts and we'll get started on this. At this point in the video, I want to pause and talk about airbags for just a minute. So this kit from Airlift comes with separate hoses, one for each of the airbags. I believe that's the way that they should be installed. I've watched several videos of guys installing these airbags on their Tacomas and other vehicles, and they use a T. They run the air hose out of the top of the airbag into a T to one line, to one location in their truck, and they air the airbags up at the same time. While this does make it more convenient, it eliminates one of the reasons why I am installing airbags. I like the airbags for adjustability, overall ride height, as well as to be able to level the load side to side. Now this Tacoma has leaf springs, but if you would, imagine for a minute that you were installing these on a truck where the airbags were the only suspension. It would essentially make your suspension a teeter-totter if these two were connected to one another. If you pushed it one way, it would just transfer the air pressure from the airbag that's getting the squish to the other side with the lighter load. Now, having leaf springs on the back of the truck does offset that effect some, but I think that to get the maximum out of your airbags, you need to air them up individually. Now, when you get to this point in the installation, you're going to want to make sure that you pay close attention to the instructions. The air fittings come with a little bit of, I don't know if that's Teflon or what they're using, that red sealant. I don't know how many times you can install and uninstall these without having to reapply that sealant, but it's going to be better if you do it right the first time. This is the airbag that we're going to use on the passenger side. That metal brace goes on top, and then this metal mounting bracket goes on top of that. You'll use some of these countersunk Allen screws. So we're going to install these flathead Allen screws. It says to torque these to 20 foot-pounds. I'm not going to torque them. I'm just going to get them good and tight. And then once I get this snugged up, then we will put the 90 in this air hole right here. can definitely feel those going in, and then just they get real tight real quick. So there's that. The instructions say to flip this over and mount this onto the bottom, but because we're going to be installing the cradle, we're going to bypass that step for now. So this has 1.5 turns past finger tight. So there's 1. and a half. Oh yeah, that swivels, so that's good. So I went ahead and bolted up the passenger side just to try to find where I need to drill the hole in this bottom piece. I'm not 100% satisfied with where I have everything positioned. There's a lot of adjustability built into this kit. I just want to go do the same installation on the driver's side and make sure that we're kind of in the same position before we start drilling holes. So we're going to go ahead, prepare this assembly for the driver's side, and get it installed. You hog-tied yourself. Charlie. So we'll put this fitting in. I saved it for last when I put the passenger side together, and it made it slightly more difficult. It was still okay, but probably easier to just do it like the instructions say. Finger tight, and then we're going to put a turn and a half on this. There's 1 and a half. And that still swivels even when you get it tight. And we're assembling the driver's side, so it's gonna go like this. Tighten these down to no more than 20 foot-pounds. I still have the jack under the axle. We're going to go ahead and loosen up the nuts on the bottom of these U-bolts and take this bump stop off. There's that. On the driver's side, there are these 3 bolts. I forget if they're holding brake lines or fuel lines or what exactly they're holding down, but it says you need to take these bolts out. And then after installation, there are some little spacers that have to go underneath these brackets. Once we have all of the bolts started, we're just going to go ahead and snug things up and then try to position it where we think it should go and then go from there. Ouch. That hurt. So I have everything in here snugged up. It's not tight, but I'm just trying to visualize the center line of this airbag and where I'm going to need to drill the hole in this bottom plate. It already has a couple of holes drilled in the plate at a diagonal, and it would be easy to just drill a hole exactly in between those two, which is what I had planned. But before I did that, I wanted to kind of mock things up and make sure that that's where the hole needed to be. So it's kind of hard just eyeballing it. It looks like that is where the hole needs to be, is kind of right in the middle of, I mean, you can't see the two holes that are there, but if I look from underneath, it's pretty much right there, which is in line with the center line of the airbag. So, and the same is true on the other side. So I think that's what we're going to do, is just go with that. These are the two holes that came pre-drilled in these plates for use with the airbags. So we have two here and two here, so these plates can be interchangeable. This is going on the passenger side of the vehicle, and we need to drill a hole approximately right there, so we just need to figure out exactly where we're going to put that. Measure that. 58 millimeters. 29 millimeters is half of that. Something like that. Yeah, that's right on. About like that. Use a punch to get us a mark. Anybody who has a clean workbench does not actually do any work. That's just for YouTube. We're close, but we still got some work to do. All right, there's one hole. When it's at full droop like this, it's slightly in front of the airbag, but as it compresses, this cradle will move back in line with the airbag. This side is going to be fun. This is going to be a wrench job. And before we tighten this up, I'm just going to test this out and make sure that this cradle meets up with the bottom of this airbag once we raise the axle up. Perfect, exactly what we wanted. All right, we're to the point on the airbag install where we're going to pause for just a moment and install our shocks. We have these Radflow 2.0, excuse me, Rycon 2.0s that we're going to put on the rear, and we're taking the rough countries off. Just like that. I don't know how long these have been on there, but obviously these rubber bushings are shot. Lengthwise, roughly the same. Maybe the rough countries might be an inch longer. Compression-wise, they feel about the same, but rebound, obviously the Recon is a lot faster on the rebound. And this is going to go like that. See if we can get just enough to get a thread or two started on this thing. All right. Might have to use the gentle persuader to get it all lined up. Looks like it needs a little more on that back side. We wrapped up our installation of the airbags. The only thing that we did off camera was run these air hoses. There's one on each side. They slide into this elbow fitting on the top of the airbag. And then I ran the air hose down the frame and zip tied it along the way. When you come around to the back, you can see that I just stubbed out the nozzle for each side and some holes on the license plate. I debated on drilling some additional holes in the plastic to mount the air nozzles, and finally just opted to do the license plate, and that way there's not any modifications made that couldn't be reversed if I wanted to remove the airbags. After driving the Tacoma with the airbags, I would say it's a little more bouncy than I had anticipated and hoped. Not terrible. I would say that with the torque cradle under each airbag and running the minimum air pressure of 5 psi, it was really bouncy. I would say you were pretty much running on the internal bump stops within the airbags. Not very comfortable at all. Added some air pressure to expand the airbag and get it off the bump stops, you know, upwards of 15 or 20 pounds per square inch per side. And that helped significantly, but it's still more bouncy than I would like. I still like the adjustability of being able to add and remove air pressure to raise and lower the rear suspension, but like I said, a little more bouncy than I would have hoped. If you liked the video, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and stay tuned for more off-road builds and outdoor adventures.